Hello out there. Hopefully you can hear me. You can hear my voice. You can hear my guitar okay? Yeah, they sent out links on email earlier today, but I now know how to get the secret link, so I can make sure that if you're missing the link, you can always missing link. Look at that. You can always get a hold of George or whatever and get the link from him. So we'll make sure. Awesome. Good. I'm glad you all can hear me. Did everybody get the link? John was saying he didn't get the link. I just want to make sure everybody else got an email or anything that had the link on it. Hey, Blake. Hey, Jack. Hey, Paul. Did you guys all get links? Did you get an email with the link to the QA today? Hey, Ken. How you doing, buddy? Hey, how you doing, buddy? All the way from Eckhart, or all the way from Germany. That's awesome. That's awesome. Got a few emails. Yeah, that's usually the way it goes. Yeah. Awesome. Good. Okay, so John didn't get an email. So John, let me check something for you, buddy. I'm going to make sure. John St. I'm just checking to make sure that you're on the list to get. Can you make sure he gets an email with the IGPA webinar QA link, please? Gotcha, buddy. Okay, let's see here. How's the hand? Scott, the hand is really good. Okay, no problem, guys. Oh, Greg didn't get it either. Hey, guys, do me a favor. If for some reason you're a member of the IGPA and you did not get a link today via email, because Paul got a bunch of them. Paul probably got all your guys's. But if you didn't get a link, please, please, please do me a huge favor and email steve@guitarzoom.com and just put in the subject line something like no QA webinar link or something like that, because we don't want to get confused with webinars with this Q&A thing that we do each month. So put something about QA webinar link, no QA webinar link, and then in the subject or in the body of the thing, just put hey George and Steve, can you make sure that I'm signed up to get notifications for the QAs each month or something. So, and then we'll check them. Otherwise, it's hard to always remember, but we'll make sure. Yeah, I never told the real story of what happened. It's actually doing so much better today. So you guys you guys get the story. I never did tell a story on Facebook because it was just so stupid. But I was at the grocery store with my daughter, and I was buying this big tub of cat litter, and they're pretty heavy. So I'm tired and I'm frustrated and I'm exhausted. So I'm picking up this stupid thing of cat litter and I'm putting it in the cart, and I got my other hand underneath there. Well, I dropped it. I dropped the frickin', well, however, I don't know how much they weigh, 20 pounds, 25 pounds. I don't know what they are. And I dropped it, and the bottom caught my wrist. And then, needless to say, it probably could have broke my wrist, but it just scraped my wrist. And it was just the end of a really good day. So that's my story of what happened to my wrist. But all is good. The cat's poop has changed. It's all good. We're all good here. So thanks for asking. All right, guys. I'm here for you. Okay, we're here for an hour, and let's talk about whatever you got going on. Okay. It doesn't pay to do groceries when you're upset. It doesn't. They always say don't do groceries when you're hungry. I guess you You shouldn't do it when you're crabbing either, but okay, so let's get going. Here we go. Thanks, guys. Ken says, does the diatonic scale have 5 positions like pentatonic? Do you have a diagram we could print out? Yes, I'm sure I do. I'm sure I got a million diagrams. I just have to find them. So Ken, the diatonic has, let me do this. Let me do this. Hold on a second, guys. I'm going to try and help Ken right this second. The diatonic actually has 7, okay, because there are 7 notes. I'm going to see if I can find something super quick, and if I can't, I'll stop this, okay? Okay. Well, ironically, one of my Guitar World things pops up, but let me show you guys this. I'm gonna type to you here for anybody that's got this question, but I'll give you this to begin with, buddy. Come on. Why are you not working? It's not working. Okay, that should work. Okay, there we go. There. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see that link. Okay, let me go back here, Ken. Because if you think about it, what you're doing, let me explain it to you this way, Ken. Yeah, Ray, if you've got something, yeah, if anybody out there's got a graph, a chart for him, throw it up there. That's awesome. You know, when I used to do private lessons all the time, I had tons of charts and I had everything organized. And now that I do this, I spend more time on video than I do on charts. So I don't know what I did with all my charts. But if you guys can throw Ken a chart, that would be awesome. But while they're doing that, Ken, think of it this way. If I was playing the C major scale, right? The C major scale, the notes would be C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. So if you think about it from a piano perspective, Ken, you're taking those 7 notes and you're putting them on one string. And then you're just building downward with each one of those 7 notes. Because that's what pentatonic does. Pentatonic, you're going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but you're putting them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You're putting them on the 6th string, and then you're building down from each one of the 5 notes. So Ken, that's what you're doing with the diatonic as well. Whoop. That's what you're doing with the, can you guys see me okay? Dean said I froze. It should be pretty good, but let me know if you're having any problems with my voice or my video. Okay, so Chris, I'm going to get to you in just a second. Ken, can you answer me? Does that make sense? We're taking the 7 notes and we're placing them on the 6th string, whatever key we're in. And then that's the way the fretboard works, no matter what scale we're creating is. We're taking, like I just said, we're taking the 5 notes of the pentatonic and we're putting them all on the 6th string and then building downward from there. So because diatonic has 7 notes, you do exactly the same thing, but you would build with 7 of them. Ken, okay, thank you, buddy. Chris says, I'm struggling. Let me get there we go. I'm struggling to play a 5th string major bar chord. My ring finger always meets the high E string. Yes, I do have an idea for you, Chris. Okay. So first thing first, Chris, here's what I want you to think about. In any chord, the beginning of any chord is 3 notes, the root, the 3rd, and the 5th. Those are the 3 notes, Chris, that make a chord sound major or minor. Or, right, that sort of thing. So on the guitar, we have 6 strings, right? Those 6 strings aren't really producing 6 different pitches. They're producing those 3 pitches multiple times. That's what's happening. So when you play a 5th string bar chord, let's say I go here to the D major bar chord, Chris. So I'm going to go to the 5th fret and I play root right here. This is my 5th. This is my 3rd. Now they're in a different order on the guitar than they would be on a piano in this case. So I have a root, I have a 5th, I have a 3rd, and then here I've got a root again, and then I've got the 5th again. Okay? So what happens, Chris, is that first of all, in the bigger picture of things, you don't need to play doubles of all the notes, okay? So as long as you had a root, a 3rd, and a 5th, Chris, your chord would sound correct. So when you're playing a 5th string major bar chord, you're playing more than you need, right? Now just follow me because I'll get to your question in a second here. So when I do this, they're all ringing out, Chris. The truth is, though, you don't have to have them all ring out to create your fifth string bar chord. It would still sound fine. And your problem, Chris, is the same problem that most people have, where the third finger doesn't bend as well as some of these other fingers do. It's not as flexible. So when you set the third finger on there, what happens sometimes is it deadens out the first string, so the first string no longer works. Please understand, Chris, that happens to a ton of people when they play. And it doesn't matter. It's perfectly fine. As long as you've got these first three strings, you've got the sound of the chord. Sorry, the first four strings. I need this guy. This is my third here. So I said that wrong. I'm sorry. You have root, fifth, root, third. I'm thinking of the wrong chord here. So you need this string and then these three strings here. We need the second string, Chris. This is the most important string other than the root right here. But if we don't have this string working, which is an octave of the fifth there, if we don't have that first string working, it's not that bad, honestly. As a matter of fact, I'll ask some of you guys out there that are listening right now, when you play a fifth string major bar chord, sometimes does your first string not work? Maybe sometimes it does, but does sometimes your first string not work when you're playing that? For me, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it works. Like right now, it works just fine. Sometimes it doesn't work. And Chris, it doesn't really make any difference because, again, it's just a repeat. But if you're stressed over it and you really want to get it to work, the trick is you've got to strategically place your third finger in a spot where you can press down on the second string, because the second string is mandatory to have in your chord, but yet miss the first string and make sure you're barring with your first finger. Okay, well, Chris, it should work eventually. Okay, but if it doesn't, what I'm telling you is don't really worry about it. See, Ken says it happens all the time and it doesn't worry him. It happens to all of us because it's an awkward shape for us to play. It just is. It's kind of an ugly shape to play, and getting that first string to work isn't always easy. But the trick is, what people do sometimes is erroneously what they do is they try and lift their third finger to get the first string to work, and then they screw up the second string. And then all of a sudden, if you do that, if the second string note changes, you don't have a major chord anymore. You have something else. So it's really, really important that when you're pressing down, okay, that you're getting that second string to make sound. You see, that's without the first string. Here's with the first string, I mean. And you're not going to notice a whole lot of difference there, Chris, between those two. But that second string is really important to get that working. So yeah, for me, you know, luckily in this case, I've got really small fingers. So over the years, my third finger does bend a little bit more. But you're right. It's just taking time to find exactly the right place to play it. But I'm going to be honest with you. If it doesn't work sometimes when I play, I don't care. It's perfectly fine. So hopefully it helps you, Chris. Jack says, I have a similar but much weirder problem. I find myself pulling and pushing the first string off the neck. Well, okay, and I'm going to get to everybody. Okay, Jack, what happens if you're pushing a string off the neck? Sometimes what's happening is, yeah, you're concentrating so much that you're kind of grasping the string, I would assume, because I've seen people do this a lot when they play, or when they play chords, they'll be so intense on what they're doing, and they'll kind of pull the strings when they're playing. You want to think of, whenever you're playing guitar, whether it's chords or scales or anything like that, Jack, think of pushing into the neck. Don't think of pulling down. Don't think of grabbing and doing this. Think of always kind of, I don't want to say forcefully, but pushing into your thumb on the back side and squeezing the neck that way. And always remember, Jack, I mean, especially if we're talking electric guitar here, it's all about refinement, really. So if you know, like, again, for me, I'm a small guy, I have small hands, and I play with really light strings. If you wind up being that you're just really heavy-handed, maybe you need to look at getting thicker strings as well, because sometimes that will help you as well. But for me, it's just the opposite. For me, I play with a lot of, and this sounds terrible, but I play with a lot of finesse because I'm not as strong in that way. And I don't mean that good or bad. I'm just saying that's the way I play. So Stevie Ray Vaughan could take an acoustic guitar, acoustic 12-string, and beat the daylights out of it and bend that thing because he was so freaking strong. I am not. It doesn't work that way for me. So because I play with really light strings, I have to be really careful because my guitar will go out of tune so quickly, and I can pull those strings as well. So hopefully, Jack, that helps you a little bit. Let's see here. Jeremy, can you explain an easy way how to nail double stops? I know they're just two notes of a bigger chord, but is there a way to always get them right depending on the strings and song chords? Well, let's see what you mean by that. Can you explain an easy way how to nail double stops? Are you saying, Jeremy, are you saying, let's see here, are you saying you don't know where they are, or you're not sure what fingers to use, or I'm not sure what you mean by get them right, Jeremy? Can you help me a little bit more with that? And thank you, everybody, for being patient and letting people's questions go up. I appreciate that so much, because otherwise that chat goes so stinking fast and I can't keep up with anything. So Jeremy, can you elaborate for us a little bit, buddy? What do you mean? You are right. They are just two notes of a bigger chord or some concept like that. But, like for instance, if I was going to play something more, or right, those, Jeremy, are double stops on the second, on the third and fourth strings, right? So whenever I'm playing double stops, I'm either, which you will do the same thing, I'm either playing with one finger or I'm playing with more than one finger. So for instance, if I'm playing Livewire by Motley Crue, I'm going to the 5th fret of the 3rd and 4th strings, and I'm just pressing on those. And again, this is where Jack's thing comes in mind too, is as I'm pressing, I'm thinking about pressing into the wood, so I'm not pulling. And thus I want that kind of sound in my playing, I'm going to think about pressing into the wood. Yeah, Scott, and real quick, I'm going to come back to this, Jeremy. Scott said, I'm just glad there's not 300 people. That's why we're going to start implementing. Once we get to that point, Scott, we'll implement more webinars and make them more specific to things. And the other thing is that we'll have a sign up where you guys will be able to ask your questions beforehand. That way I've got time to prepare for the questions. And if we need to, we'll just start doing more of them each month, which is totally fine with me. I like doing these anyway. So, so hopefully that makes sense. Let's see here. Sometimes I have to hunt and peck to play two notes on the same fret for the same fret or spaced out more. Boy, Jeremy, I really want to understand. Sometimes double stops are kind of Chinesey, other times less so. Well, that is true. I mean, it is going to be that. I mean, if you think about it this way, buddy, if you're playing, like, let's say this, everybody, for this sake. If I was to go to the 5th fret of the 3rd and 4th strings, and instead of getting 2 5s, I go to a 4 on the 3rd string, right? And then if I do a 7 on the 3rd string, those are all creating what we call triads, Jeremy, even though there's only 2 notes, which we would technically call a dyad, but they're major and minor and intervallic sounding things. So for instance, if I do this, Jeremy, and I play 5 on the 4th string and 7 on the 3rd string, that's where you're going to get this. You see, that's where I'm going to get that power chordy kind of sound. Now watch what happens, Jeremy, if I do this. Instead of playing 5 and 7, I'm going to add on an 8 on the 3rd string. Let me go up to here. So I'm in A. So now listen to it, Jeremy. And all of a sudden I get more of a Dokken kind of sound. So the trick with these is in learning songs, you're going to start learning that there's a lot of double stopped ideas that are really common, and they create different sounds. Like, I mean, I grew up in the 80s, for God's sake, so everybody did this stuff, right? So here I'm on 7 and 9 on the 3rd and 4th strings, and I do this. So I just went from 9 to 8, and I get it's not loud, right? You see? So what's really cool about that era is that people really did a lot of stuff like this. Check this one out. Here's another one. This one I'm going to invert, Jeremy, and I'm going to do 7th fret of the 5th string and 5th fret of the 4th string. And now if I do this, listen to this. I don't know if you'll know this or not, but let's see. There it is. There's just so many of those. If we go into Symphony of Destruction, you know, with all these. You know, the beauty of this stuff, and please, everybody out there, please remember the joy, for me at least, is in the songs, guys. Learn these songs, play songs, even if you can't play the whole song, even if you can't play the whole solo. I don't give a crap about any of that stuff. This is where the good stuff is, okay, depending on what it is that you like to play. Like, this is my home. You know, if you've never listened to it, I have a band called Stine, Grimm, and then my last name Stine, and I'm best friends with Steve Grimmett from Grim Reaper, who lives out in England, and he and I are buddies, and we did an album together, and it encompasses all of these kinds of things that I like from 80s and prog rock and power metal and all these different kinds of things. But then it's got like pop songs. I wouldn't call them pop necessarily, but more major key kinds of stuff in there. And so I just want you to think about that a little bit, that, Jeremy, you're on the right track, buddy. But you're going to learn more about the kinds of sounds because of the, you know, you said it. It sounds kind of Chinesey, which is absolutely true. It all depends on what you're doing with them. But the more songs you learn, the more you start learning where to put them so they sound a certain way, so they sound kind of cool. Paul, let's see here. Did somebody answer Paul? Paul says, when playing octaves, how do you make sure the string you skip does not ring out? Okay. So Paul, we're going to get you quick. Here's the trick to making sure that no string rings out ever when you're doing whatever it is you're doing. Your first finger needs to be in control. So watch this, Paul. If I do this, you're welcome, Jeremy. If I do this, if I go to the 6th string, and I want everybody to try this, especially Paul, okay? So if I press on the 6th string, 5th fret, what I want you to try and do is I want you to press on that string, and then I want you to lay your first finger against all the other strings, okay? Don't push on them, just lay against them, and then strum the entire guitar, okay? So you should only be hearing one sound. You should be hearing that one pitch, which is the 5th fret of the 6th string, and everything else should be deadened out with this index finger. That's the trick to being able to play quietly when you're playing chords or when you're playing rhythm. When you're playing solos. Now, it doesn't really make any difference. I'll show you a couple of different things here, Paul, but it doesn't make any difference what you add on or where you go. See, now if I was to take the 3rd finger and place it on the 7th fret of the 4th string, okay, now I got my octaves. Yeah, you got to curve your finger enough to touch all the strings. And guys, especially Paul, everybody out there, when you're doing this, this is essential, because if you ever play really loud or you play on stage or something like that, you're going to wind up with a bunch of feedback and a bunch of strings that are, you know, ringing out. You don't want to do that. The trick to good guitar playing, especially when you're using distortion, is always deaden out what you don't need. Never leave anything exposed if you're not going to be playing it, okay? So in this case, if I was playing an octave on the 6th string and then the 7th fret of the 4th string, my first finger is deadening everything, except now my 3rd finger is right here, so it's going to allow that to ring out. And see, that way I can play aggressively. I don't have to just kind of tap in and be all careful. I can just beat the crap out of the guitar, doing whatever it is I'm going to do. Okay? All right, perfect. So Paul and everybody out there, again, remember this. If I take that octave idea that I just did and I move down one string onto the 5th string, so I'm on 5 and 3, The tip of my index finger now kills the 6th string. So now that doesn't make any sound. See? So now that's in control. Now the problem is if I move down again, which means now I got to play 5th fret of the 4th string and 8th fret of the 2nd string. Now I can't touch this 6th string anymore. I can deaden out the 5th string with this. I use my middle finger to deaden out the 6th string by lightly touching it like this. I don't push on it, I just touch it. So now this finger is killing everything up here. As I keep going, it'll kill everything up there. And this finger's still killing everything underneath. And that's kind of how you deaden out those, okay? Hopefully that helps you, buddy. Ken says, meandering in A major using pentatonic, the position is 3 frets down. Is that the same with diatonic? Well, it would be the same with diatonic, but Ken, we don't usually think of diatonic that way. Diatonic, we think of diatonic as it is. So, for instance, you know, what I would suggest, Ken, is I don't know what you're working on as far as major scale stuff goes, but let me see that link I just sent you. The link that I just put in there in the chat, Ken, you should read that. You should watch that when we get done. Watch the video. Why do I keep doing that? I got 2 keyboards, 2 mice, 2 computers that I use for everything in here. So, sorry, I keep tapping the wrong thing over there. So the one I just put up there, Ken, you should watch that. That first position, when we talk about diatonic scales, please remember, whenever we're talking about positions, it's just to help us in understanding what we're talking about with each other, okay? The bigger picture that I always think about is the goal is just to understand that whatever it is you're playing on your fretboard consists of X amount of notes, and it exists on each string. That's just the way it is, okay? So instead of getting hung up on 1st position or 2nd position or 3rd position or whatever people call them, the trick is just to understand that you're just creating a scale from a series of notes, and one of those notes is the root. So we tend to think of, when we want to be in C, we tend to think in our head that we should start on the 8th fret of the 6th string, when really we could start anywhere, right? But in our mind, we think we should start on the 8th fret because that's where C is. Or if we're going to be in the key of G, we think, well, we should start on the 3rd fret of the 6th string because that's where G is in our mind. But the truth is, Ken and everybody, G is everywhere, right? I mean, so if I was going to play, and this is really freeing to learn how to think of it like this, because otherwise you're always stuck thinking like, you know, I'm in position 1 and then I'm in position 2. And I get it. I don't think I don't do that. I do that. But if I'm going to be in A minor pentatonic, I don't just want to think, well, I go here, and that's where A minor pentatonic is. That's the 1st position. A minor is everywhere. But I had to, at some point, just like you did, I had to learn to connect 1st position to 3rd position and so on. So when it comes to major scales, Ken, we really think of the major as being the 1st position. There isn't a shift down and shift up kind of thing. Major, if you want to play in G major, this is what you learn how to play. And then as you learn your theory, you start learning how all your modes just come from that scale. And again, so for me, Ken, that's my 1st position of A major. That isn't 3 frets lower from the minor. It's a completely different kind of thing. So without confusing anybody too much, think of it this way. Here's a natural progression to learning your scales. You start by learning your pentatonic, your minor pentatonic especially. And you learn to play all 5 positions of your minor pentatonic. And you learn to meander. And I mean, again, this takes time, but it's a great way to nurture this whole thing. So you're playing A minor pentatonic across the whole fretboard. All 5 positions, getting comfortable with moving, you know, not just vertically, but horizontally, okay? So you're learning about where some of the notes are, and you're learning about phrasing, and you're learning all these different kind of things, okay? Then you have 2 choices. Either then you're going to shift to another key. Maybe you try G minor, right? So now we take this whole treadmill of this scale that we're learning, and we just shift down 2 frets to G minor, and we do exactly the same idea, right? Or we go to D minor, so we treadmill it up to D, and we do the exact same idea, okay? Then we want major pentatonic. So major pentatonic, as Ken just stated, we learn by moving down 3 frets. We treadmill the whole thing down 3 frets. We start learning from there that we have a relative major and minor. Because if we move A minor down 3 frets, we realize that A major and F sharp minor are the same scale, right? So all of a sudden we're introduced to this logic of theory, okay? Then the next thing you start doing is you take your minor pentatonic and you start expanding it with what I call pentatonic expansions. You add in a ninth, right? Even if you don't understand what a ninth is. So in your mind, you're still visualizing pentatonic, but you're expanding it by adding other notes in. And it sounds more interesting. Maybe you add in a sixth. But again, you're still visualizing pentatonically. Okay, then once you get all of that planned out, then you start moving on to diatonic, okay? And you start learning the whole theory of diatonic, but don't try and relate it to pentatonic, in my opinion, until later, okay? Keep pentatonic, pentatonic. Keep pentatonic expansion, pentatonic expansion. And then when you start learning diatonic, learn all the theory of diatonic. Then see the relationships. Because diatonic takes a little bit different approach because you're learning legitimate, a scale that isn't just for playing, it's for theory, it's for chords, it's for all kinds of stuff. So you don't want to keep trying to go, well, it's kind of like this. Learn it for what it is so it actually opens up your mind and really gets you understanding a bigger picture of stuff, if that kind of helps. Chris says, Paul says the ninth is actually the second note, but an octave higher. Right, right. That's right. We normally refer to it as a ninth and not a second, but it is the same thing. Absolutely. Chris says, got a question about tuning, Steve. I've heard of different types of tuning, other people, standard tuning. Would there ever be a situation where I would need to tune my guitar to anything other than standard tuning? Chris, there are tons of reasons why you would tune other than standard tuning. Like when I was growing up, one of my favorite bands was Kiss. Kiss always tuned a half step down. They always did until Lick It Up came out. Then they tuned standard on Lick It Up. Otherwise, they were tuned half step down all the time. And that, like Guns N' Roses, same thing. The first few albums of Guns N' Roses were all tuned down a half step. Half step was a really, really, really popular tuning. Yep, Paul says E flat. That's exactly right. The premise behind half step tuning is you take your entire guitar, you tune it down a half step. The premise of it was when you go out on tour and you start playing, it was easier for the singers to reach some of the pitches that they were singing in the studio, because if they tuned down a half step, the singer wouldn't have to sing quite as high. What they started finding is, and there's a bunch of stories about this, like with Tony Iommi from Black Sabbath and things like that, but as they tuned down, the sound got a little bit meatier and the strings got a little bit more spaghetti-like. So then all of a sudden they could start choosing, well, do I want to thick up my string for my tone and be tuned down, or do I want to keep that kind of spaghetti thing happening? Well, then all of a sudden people were tuning down another step or another half step and another half step and things like that. So Chris, yes, you do need to be able to tune differently. On my guitar, I have a locking tremolo with a floating tremolo system that locks. And so on this guitar, I can't just tune it down without doing a bunch of work. So you can't see it, but I got a bunch of other guitars around here that are all tuned differently that I never use for Guitar Zoom, because I never, everything I teach is in standard, because most of the time when we're discussing things, we tune standard. When you're in a band and stuff, like there are bands I play in where I'll bring 3 or 4 different guitars along that are all tuned differently. Another kind of tuning, Chris, that you're going to come across is called drop tuning, where you just tune the 6th string down from wherever your other strings are. If you're tuned standard, you tune your 6th string down a whole step. If you ever learn how to play slide, then you get into open tunings. There's open G tuning and open D tuning and things like that. As a matter of fact, I talk about those tunings some I have a new course coming out called Play Acoustic Now, and I talk about some open tunings and things like that. But Chris, yeah, there is a lot of reason for that. That's why it's nice to have a guitar that doesn't have a locking system and doesn't have a tremolo and all that kind of stuff. Something that's really easy to tune. I don't have it sitting here, but I've got an ESP that's a Les Paul style, and I can just tune that any old way I want. It works perfect. So yeah, Chris, you won't need to tune differently to learn theory and to learn, all the stuff that we talk about. But as Paul says, you're going to need to tune differently for different kinds of songs. So if you wanted to play along with Rock and Roll All Night by Kiss, you're going to have to tune down a half step. If you want to play Sweet Child of Mine, you're going to have to tune down a half step. Unless you use modern technology and you use your computer and tune the song up a half step, which is what I do nowadays. instead of me tuning 50 different ways, I just tune the frickin' songs up to whatever it is I need. So hopefully that helps you a little bit. Chris says, so would that also make your chords different? No. Here's what happens. This is kind of confusing, Chris, but this is a G chord. If I tune down a half step and I'm in a room with you and a bunch of other guitar players and we're tuned down a half step, we still call this G. If we tune down a whole step and we play this chord, we still call it G. The rest of the world doesn't get it. If you're playing with a piano player, he's going to be going, what? I don't get what you're doing. But piano, if you're playing jazz, you don't usually tune differently. So we have a language of our own as guitar players, as a band, where if I was tuned down a whole step and I still played this chord, I would still call it G, even though technically it's F. But that would be freaking mind-boggling, calling this an F, and everybody's looking at it going, no, it's not, it's a G. So think about that, Chris. In our bubble, in our guitar world bubble, if we tune differently, we still call them the same thing. So if I was tuned down, who God knows how far, and I played this chord, I would still call this a G power chord. Because if I called it a D, it would screw everybody up. So, and then as far as drop tuning goes, drop tuning is a little bit harder. What happens a lot in my experience with drop tuning, Chris, is that I just call this third fret, right? So if I'm making a power chord here, I call it third fret. Now, if I'm talking to a bass player who is a skilled bass player, I'm going to refer to this as F, because he's not really thinking about it as G anyway. He's looking for pitches. He's playing a 5-string or a 6-string. He's got his own thing going. So in that case, Chris, in drop tuning, I would then refer to the actual pitch. So there are times, Chris, where you need to refer to the pitches depending on the musicians you're playing with. And then sometimes you're just going to refer to the shape depending on the players that you're playing with. And they're both legitimate. We don't have to sit here and go, well, jazzers are smarter because they, no. It's just the environment. It's just whatever you're doing. So, and like John says, keyboard players can transpose to wherever we are too. But usually keyboard players are playing, like a keyboard player will learn a song in a key, and if he or she is in a different key, they may transpose it anyway. They may not want to learn it all over again. So even if we're not transposing it, let's say we're tuned standard, Chris, and our song is actually in A flat, but they learned it in G. They may not want to relearn their piano parts in A flat. They'll just transpose it and play it in G like they want to, but the pitch that's coming out is A flat. So they're kind of cheating the same way we do. So, yeah, and like John said, Variax guitars. There's a lot of different things that you can do for that. There's actually pedals that do a wonderful job of doing that kind of stuff. I use a Morpheus pedal, and then there's a drop tune pedal that you can get from Digitech too that just does a great job of retuning. You just push a button and now your guitar is a half step lower, or a whole step lower, step and a half lower. You don't even have to retune the sucker. You just use the pedal and it just retunes you. And the tracking on those pedals are so much better nowadays than they were 2, 3, 4 years ago. So if you owned one back 5 years ago and you went, wow, it was kind of they warbled and things like that, they did, but they're way better now, way better. The only thing is, if you're using a pedal to drop tune your guitar or to tune your guitar down, you got to make sure that the volume of your amp is louder than the volume of your strings, because if you can still hear your strings and then you hear your amp and it's coming out a half step lower, it sounds weird. So you got to make sure your amp is louder than the sound of your strings. Let's see here. Jeremy says, do you think bass lessons are sometime we can look forward to in the future? Absolutely. Yeah, I have no doubt we'll start getting into bass stuff after a while. We have so much planned for 2016, and we are working our tails off to try and make just everything better and more fun and more of a community and so many things on our side. We have meetings almost every day about this stuff, trying to figure out how to give you guys a better experience. But I think doing bass lessons would be freaking awesome. I've got a guy that wants to do some ukulele stuff. I got another guy that plays banjo. I've talked to all these people. I just need to make sure there's a market for these things. I know there's a market for bass. There's no doubt. The summit, we're still working on October. That's another thing I think I'm going to wind up having to help out a little bit with is trying to get that whole thing organized, which is great. I'm just trying to push this Play Acoustic Now thing out because it's been just a lot of work. But it's been awesome. I'm really excited about it. But I'm finally in the final stages of all of that stuff. So now I can get back to some club stuff that I need to do and get back on the summit thing and some stuff like that. And then, and then like I said, I got a good friend of mine that's doing a bunch of pedal stuff now, a bunch of gear stuff. He's going to be talking about guitars, guitar bodies, guitar styles, building guitars. I mean, there's going to be all kinds of different stuff. So no dates on the summit. I'm hoping for October. That's the big thing is hoping for that. We had somebody set up that was supposed to help us kind of plan that. It didn't work out. So I think it's on my plate right now to help get that thing organized a bit. Yeah, there's more Tone Zone stuff coming. I've got a bunch of stuff waiting to be done by our videographers. So there is more stuff for that too. And I'll be starting the Wicked Lick of the Day after Easter. I'm going to start those again, but we're going to be doing those on Facebook. So Facebook just seems to have a better interface. The resolution seems to be better. And I like Periscope, but it just seemed like the resolution was quite fuzzy. So I'm going to start doing them on Facebook next week, and hopefully that will. Yeah, I know. There's so much stuff, isn't there? Yeah, I know. So the Tone Zone stuff will be on IGPA. The Shop Talk stuff with Paul Vidston from Flatland will be on IGPA. The Wicked Lick stuff will be on YouTube. Just stay in touch with us, and we'll make sure you get everything that you want. I'm hoping that it will be a Halloween jam party. Holy crap, wouldn't that be fun? Celebrate Halloween out there. Oh, man, that would be really cool. On the new program, Ray, are you talking about Play Acoustic Now? If you're talking about Play Acoustic Now, that goes on sale sometime pretty quick here and be released in the next week or something like that. So, yeah, pretty quick here. Scott, if you're having a problem with choosing a different module, get a hold of customer support, and I will let them know. Jack, do me a favor, buddy. Put your full name in your post there, and let me go here. Let me do this. Let me see where everybody is here. Go see the first lick of the day from there. You guys, hey, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. Oh, Scotland. Oh, my gosh. That would be cool. You guys have great ideas. Just hold on now. So lick of the day. We're going to make sure that that's on IGPA as well. Most of this bonus stuff, we'll make sure that it's on Guitar Zoom page or IGPA. It's all kind of the same thing in there. So lick of the day, Shop Talk, Tone Zone. I'll make sure I got all that. And then where did you go? Scott, I think that was you that was saying that you couldn't change modules. Scott, text me or put up in the chat your full name. And then if you don't mind, put your email. Otherwise, don't put that. Guys, here's another thing, too. Always make sure that you only have one email address with GuitarZoom. Because if you have more than one email address, things get really screwy. Because you wind up getting way more emails than you should. Or some really important stuff is sent to one email that you don't really use anymore. Scott, I got it. So let's see. IGPA at Wild Horse Saloon. Well, I'll look into Wild Horse Saloon either way. That would be fun to jam at. Wouldn't that be cool? Okay. So, okay, guys. So that makes sense. Let's see, where are we at here? We're doing great. Okay, Scott, I'm going to get this figured out for you about changing modules and figure out what's going on. I'm going to have somebody get back to you ASAP on that. And I got your ideas about the Shop Talk, Tone Zone, and Wicked Lick of the Day all on the same page. Okay. Yeah, John, I know. John says I've gotten burned by wrong email too many times. It sucks, and we try our best on our side, but it's really hard because sometimes we'll have, a customer that has 2 or 3 emails, and they're like, "Why am I always getting all these emails?" And it's like we don't have, because a lot of times you have somebody that has that you can have 5 people with the same name, and so if that's happening, please check on your side to see if you might have more than one email that you've signed up for this or something with, and we can help get all that organized. We just need to be aware that there's a problem. Otherwise, we don't know that there might be a problem. So, okay, cool. Looks like we're doing okay. Ray McCormick, you're having the same thing. I got you. And let's see, McCormick, Ray. Thanks for bringing this to my attention, guys. This is really awesome. We can't get better at what we do if we don't know what's going on out there. So that's why it's nice to know. And you don't want sign-up courses with multiple emails. Yeah. Greg, if you can't get your modules changed, please, I'm so glad that you're here letting me know. Greg, tell me your last name, and I'll check into you as well. Because if there's something going on there, this is kind of new for us. So let's see. Would be great if one could order one hotel for the summit meeting. That's part of the thing, is we're gonna try and book a bunch of hotel or reserve a bunch of hotel rooms at the hotel. That's what we're working on. So let's see, where are you? Greg, you can't change modules. Greg, let me know your last name and I'll get you on there. And Ray McCorm, where'd you go? CK. So Ray, there's no K at the end, it's just C? Is that what you're saying? And Greg, Greg Reynolds, I got you, bud. Guitar, Greg, 1015 at Yahoo, got you. Okay. You know what, guys? This, you can get anything. There's tons of cool stuff out there, but if you can see this, let me move it back a little bit. Move it up a little bit. It's an LR Baggs Lyric. This one, this is an acoustic pickup that I just had put in my Martin, and I frickin' love it. I love it for live. I love it for studio. The LR Baggs stuff is really, really good. So, I mean, again, I'm not endorsing anything. I don't care what you use, but for acoustic pickups, this one's really, really nice. I would strongly recommend that you have it installed professionally, unless you really know what you're doing, because there's a microphone thing that clips up in there, and it's really important that it's put in the right place to get the optimal sound. Let's see. So yeah, this is a good one. I really like this. Yep, this just it doesn't hardwire in. It just goes into underneath. Let me show you if you can kind of see it here, and then I'll get to your other question here. So of course they just replaced the pin, right? But that's removable. And what it is it's just this little thing right here, if you can see that, which is underneath there. Okay, it's just glued in there with a little sticky thing that pops off when needed. But that's where my volume is. Okay, and then the pickup on this one, the actual microphone is right around in here. Okay, so it's somewhere around in here. I think that's where they put it. I didn't do it, needless to say, but it's somewhere around in this area, I do believe. But yeah, and it just pops in there. It's pretty easy to do. It sounds awesome. But I mean, I love this guitar anyway. So let's see here. Chord hangout. Well, the cord would hang out from here, you know, just like you normally would. Yeah, the one. Let's see here. The one that I just showed was LR Baggs. I don't know who did the other one that Paul had mentioned, but there's a volume control. Yep, the volume control is right here. You probably, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little bit sticking out right here. The volume control is right there, so you just turn it. So yeah, super easy. Seymour Duncan, yeah. Seymour Duncan's got a bunch of great pickups too. But... Cool. Yeah, so anyway, guys, we got a couple more minutes. Does anybody have any other questions about, I saw something about modes, but then it went by, so I'm not sure what that was. But I thank you for the names that you've given me here for the module changes. I'll check about, and then we'll talk about some of these other ideas too to make sure all of our stuff is in one place. John says, when soloing, I've got the speed picking down thanks to 42 days, but I'm having a hard time with hammer-ons and pull-offs. My fingers always want to go down when I pick. Can you give a good exercise? John, are you saying you need to exercise for hammer-ons and pull-offs? Is that what you're looking for? Want to go down? If is that what you're looking for, John? There's a couple things that you could do if that's what you're asking, but answer my question first, and I'll make sure that we're on the right page. Are you looking for some things for hammer-ons and pull-offs, John? Okay. The one that you want, which is the hardest one to do, but it's absolutely essential if you've never done this before, is one that I call a 20-second exercise. And what you're going to do, it doesn't matter where you go on the guitar, but what you're going to do, I'm just going to go to the third string, 5th fret. And what you're going to do is you're going to do a series of hammer-ons and pull-offs from your first, that's what I had, yep, John. You're going to do a hammer-on and pull-off from 5th fret to 6th fret. And when you do these, John, you got to smack your finger down. Don't pretend. Literally smack your finger down and literally flick your finger back off. Okay? And what you do, John, is you do that for 20 straight seconds until you're burning. Your finger's freaking burning, okay? Then what you do is, without stopping, you go from first finger to third finger right here, and you keep going. And without stopping, you go from first finger to pinky. And without stopping, you're going to set your middle finger down, and you're going to go to your third finger. And then without stopping, you're going to go to your pinky. Nah, it doesn't matter what your first finger should be. You're going to be in so much pain by the end of this anyway. And then the third finger goes on there, and you do hammer-ons from third to pinky. So no, it's about building strength. Don't worry about, like, when you play, if your hand tends to want to shift around or your wrist tends to want to shift around, let it do that. That's okay. Don't feel like you have to sit in one spot like this all the time. If your hand needs to shift, or your wrist or your elbow, don't worry about that. So yeah, it can totally be curved. But you know, your biggest problem is going to be these 2 fingers and then these 3 fingers. This guy with any of them is pretty good, although, you know, this one's still kind of tough, but it's these. And this is a great exercise that will make you very, very frustrated, but man, it is a beautiful exercise to do. And here's my advice to you is, when you're doing it, don't always start with 1 and 2, because by the time you get to the very end with 3 and 4, you're going to be blasted. You're not going to be able to do it very well. So sometimes start backwards. And then sometimes just focus on certain strings, or certain fingers, excuse me. Like, you might just focus on these for a while. And then once it gets really, really sore and you get fatigued, stop for a while, stretch out, all that kind of stuff, do your normal stuff. And then maybe, you know, a little while later, 20 minutes later, come back and do it again. You know, just really, 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 really hit it. And after a while, you're going to develop some massive strength in those fingers. But you can't always start with the strongest ones and end with the weakest ones. And then the weakest ones are really never, you know, these guys are pretty good. You know, these guys are pretty good. It's this stuff that you got to really work with. And once you get really good with those, then you can start doing some 3-finger exercises and different things like that, you know, that are just combinations of 2, right? If I go like this, then I'm doing 2 combinations. Of course, it's way harder on an acoustic than an electric, but. Then you start developing those muscles as well. You don't have to feel like you do 50 of those things a day, because it's just going to be overload. I would start with just the 2s, just the 2 combinations. You can get it done in a couple of minutes. And then stretch it out, do it a little later, do them every day. 3 months from now, you're going to be like, wow, you're going to feel it for sure. I promise you. Yeah, and Chris says, got one of those guitar gripper things. Those are really good. The only thing you want to be careful with, Chris, with those is that make sure that you're not feeling pain, like literal, like if you press with your pinky and it's too tight and you're feeling like sharp pains. I've heard bad things about those. And believe me, I've had one before. I always get the lighter ones because I'm so scared that I'm gonna hurt something. But be careful with that, with your less strong fingers. Don't try and just kill them. You know, the thing about this is you can only do it so hard. By the time you're tired, you know, where this thing, it makes you think that you're supposed to be able to push it down. You might not be able to push it down at all. It's just the pressure of the push, where these 2 fingers can literally push those buttons down. So be a little careful with that, Chris. Let's see here. Ken says, I've been meandering for a couple of months now, and after playing for 5-6 years, it's been the single best exercise. I am so glad to hear that, man. I'm so glad. I love it. I think it's really, really important. And again, once you learn how to meander, you can build musically on top of that, but it starts giving you just a real comfortable overview of how the entire fretboard for you is working, both physically and visually. Has anyone videoed their improvements with their finger exercises? I would love to see that too, John. Thanks. Had some Guitar Zoom shirts made, yeah. Let's see. I'm having the hardest time with chords. I need a course that teaches which chords go together in any key. I just can't put them together. Well, Christopher, there's Music Theory Made Easy, which is probably not a bad course for that. The Play Acoustic Now course that I'm coming out with right now is going to have a segment on fundamental theory. It's going to talk about 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6 chords and how they work together, how chord progressions are made out of those things. We're going to look at some examples of some songs, things like that. Christopher, those might be a couple places to go for that. But if you check out for a freebie, if you go to the Guitar World site and you look up some of my lessons on there, I know I did one on there about chords that might be able to help you out as well, just to get an idea of how chords work, about the 6 chords. As a matter of fact, I know there's one on YouTube as well. I know there's one on my page, on the Steve Stine page, or Stine Music Lessons. I don't remember which one it is, but if you go on that page, I know there's a theory one that talks about chords that might help you a little bit as well. So try those maybe. Do I have any Mixolydian examples like the Grateful Dead? One of the coolest Mixolydian examples that I always think of is No Rain by Blind Melon. It's a great solo. Another one, which is a hidden gem, is Sweet Home Alabama by Lynyrd Skynyrd. He's all over the place in Mixolydian on that frickin' song. It's awesome. So there isn't, Grateful Dead did a lot of Mixolydian. Fish does a lot of Mixolydian. But like certain songs just stand out to me that are more Mixolydian. So awesome, Ray. Thanks for helping, guys. This is awesome. Did something go wrong yesterday with the webinar? No, the webinar was going on. What happened was, for some reason, at the beginning there was the first 2 minutes, Glenn wasn't on screen. So I had him reboot his computer and use Firefox. So he was on about 8 after, and he was on there. So it's getting better with Glenn. He's learning how the software works and all that kind of stuff. So he's going to start doing 2 webinars per month. He's going to do one on the 1st and 3rd Sundays of every month, unless something comes up. Otherwise, that's when they'll be. So you can write it on your calendar. Unless something comes up, Glenn will be there the 1st and 3rd Sundays of every month at 1 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. Eastern. So, and again, we log in early, make sure everything's working. Just yesterday, something went a little buggy, and he's learning the software. And by next time, I'm sure he's going to be rocking at it. So, okay, guys, I tell you what, I got to get going. I would love to keep going, but I have to get back up to my family here, and I know you guys have a million things to do. So I'm going to look into some of these problems for all you guys. I'm going to get all this stuff fixed. Give me a day to get all this, organized, because there's a bunch of our team that's already in bed because they live overseas. But we will get this done. The 5th RIP module is still coming. Yep. So, and guys, if you have any questions about those, please make sure that you go to steve@guitarzoom.com and ask the questions about those, okay? You can go to customer support if it's something in specific, but if you're not exactly sure, go to steve@guitarzoom.com and send a question. And George usually answers my questions, but if it's something that he doesn't know the answer to, he always asks me about it and we talk about it. So, guys, take care, everybody. Have a wonderful evening, and keep smiling, keep playing, and I will see you all soon.